they see these people as gurus or masters. And a lot of the times these people are not who they say they are. They have not healed their own wounds, nor do they know anything about being trauma informed. As a healer, it is your responsibility to be trauma informed. I want to say, be careful, especially women, vulnerable women who go to these men who, a lot of them get sucked in these like sexual encounters with them. They get promised all this stuff and then they're taken advantage of. The thing is that so many women are scared to speak up. I am not scared. Fuck that shit. I'm sorry. Excuse my language. Many other modalities, pretty much a lot of these gurus, they make up it's made up. It's literally made up. And people have these like somatic releases, but there's no integration, then you could do more harm than good.
Today, I'm bringing back a very special guest who I deeply respect. She is a hypnotherapist, past life regressionist, Reiki healer, mindset coach, therapist, and so much more. And throughout her journey, she has witnessed and experienced things that need to be talked about. We are discussing trauma-informed care in the spiritual space. Now, to be clear, this episode is not about tearing down any other practitioners. It is about ethics in spiritual work. It is about trauma-informed care and protecting people who are vulnerable, seeking healing. Now, I have a background in therapy myself, so I understand the responsibility when it comes to protecting clients in a healing space. And the spiritual space is still like the wild, wild west, and that needs to change. So let's have the conversation. Welcome back to the podcast, Grawben Corona.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles, for that. Oh my gosh. Yes. It is a long overdue conversation. And like you say, it's like, okay, we've been in so many healing spaces and there's with this, like you said, it's like the wild, wild west. I really wanted to speak on this topic because one of our behavioral background, I have 20 years of behavioral modification specialties, and we know that when we work with people, our number one thing is to do no harm. And with many of these modalities and weekend certifications and programs that, people get drawn to because it just looks really intriguing, they don't do the research to see if there is a fundamental just structure to it. Do they talk about ethics? Do they guide you through being trauma informed, or do they teach you about being trauma informed? Because we're working with a lot of people who have things from the DSM, extreme PTSD, and who are just looking for a quick, easy fix. And I wanted to come on here and talk about my personal experience with an organization that has gone very big on social media that I worked very closely with as a handpicked mentor, because also I see a new modality and I'm also intrigued. I was like, I want to see if I can bring that modality into my practice because it will help my current clients. So of course, through my journey and my experience working with this huge organization where you see the marketing everywhere, and it has very big movements where people are having these huge somatic releases and people are like, is that real? Oh my gosh, like what is that? And there's so many videos and people leaving reviews and testimonies, but there is no structure. And I can say that because I was on the team, and after trying to get structure for the students, after trying to advocate for the students, I realized, that a lot of the people that come here are very, like you said, very vulnerable, but at the same time, they see these people as gurus or masters. And a lot of the times these people are not who they say they are. They themselves have not done the work They have not healed their own wounds, nor do they know anything about being trauma informed. And I learned this personally because when there's a platform and many of the students that want to continue or make this like a practice, many of them don't come from like a background of therapy. They're just people who are going through their own experience, who want to become healers themselves. But as a healer, it is your responsibility to be trauma informed. I can't tell you the amount of questions that were directed to me. How do I deal with this emotion? Or how do I deal with a person with addiction? Or what if the person has like heart conditions? Or what if I'm like, we are working with the fascia. We are working with the nervous system. We are working with the meridians. Like there's no documentation or like, I've worked, in many schools. When you graduate or you finish the program, there's a website that's like, here's our consent documentations. Here is like, you need to have insurance. You have to make sure that you have liability insurance as a practitioner. None of that is talked about. And a lot of times these, like I mentioned, these master teachers, these gurus, they're not who they say they are. They're in it for the money. They just, that's it. Yeah. So I'll just kind of go with that for now because there's so much more
Wow.
that
Grawben, first of all, thank you. Yeah. No, I was just going to say thank you for sharing that, and just to be here to share your story, to share what you've experienced, because you said a lot there that as you were talking, I'm like, I've seen that. I've seen that. I think a lot of people are going to be able to recognize these red flags and maybe recognize when maybe the level of care isn't appropriate for them or as advertised. And so it sounds like, without, saying the name of the organization, if you're not comfortable doing that, you were literally a member of the team. And were you brought into like notice where maybe these ethics were not in place, or was that something that you discovered as you kind of became a part of the organization? And what did you do about that? Did you take action on that, or did you?
Yeah, there was many times where I tried to advocate. I was given a lot of free range, but there was never a contract, nor did he want to sign a contract.
Mm.
So he wanted these mentors to, one, create the foundation of the program or the platform, the app platform for his students. And then we worked so hard. We answered questions. We created videos. Like I made documents. I typed out all the contraindications of like who not to work with. Like that way we are all on the same page. Like there is no structure. And, it's like, okay, well, when I leave or if I choose to leave, it's like, am I going to get residuals for all the work I put in? Like, it's just these gurus taking advantage of people. And I can tell you there were a lot of other people on the team who were also taken advantage of. No set work hours and no, the pay was all over the place. Like we wouldn't get paid on time. It was just horrible. So like all these things that are happening behind the scenes, lack of communication from the team. It's like, hey, the student needs this. The student's asking about this. It's like the response time. It was a freaking mess. And I have my own business to run. So I did this, because I was promised so much, but I started to see, okay, we don't need you anymore. Thanks. But now the students could go back on the little lens, ask questions and see all of my contributions and the thoroughness of how I would answer questions. Very detailed. Like I lead from the heart. I have a very strong moral compass. And I started to see complaints, redirection, just tell them this, just do this. Like it was very shady. So I started to really notice a lot of narcissistic behaviors within the company. And you have to research these people and know who they are, because They're not always who they say they are. They don't always use their given name, and then a lot of the times they give themselves titles, but then when you do the research of like their education, it's not an accredited school. It's like some rinky dink little like school in some random country that just gives you like a doctorate, and they claim to be a university. It's not an accredited university by like a governing higher education, like, school. So, and a lot of these people don't take the time to look into this stuff. So it's like you have to be very careful. I always learned like very careful who you open yourself up to, where you're putting your energy, because yeah, you just have to be very, very careful. There's a lot more. It's like these companies don't realize that when we are the mentors, we work with the students. Students reach out to us privately on our private platforms, on their platform, in the private messages. We hear the complaints, but when the master teacher, is not putting an effort in to support his students or support his mentors, the master has to show up. How are we supposed to teach or continue teaching the teachings if there's no structure, there's no fundamentals, if they don't have ethics themselves, if they don't follow, their own teachings? And yeah, so I'll take a breath right there.
Absolutely. No, take many breaths. Take many breaths. This is a large conversation, and it's one that has been, I feel like it's reaching a fever pitch. It's been bottlenecking for a while. People are feeling it, and they're either talking around it or not yet quite have the words or a forum to really discuss it, because it's just simply how things are and have been for a while. And I'm listening to what you're saying, and it just feels like people can kind of recognize that, and they're like, well, that's the space. There's, I don't want to, now I want to name drop all of these other like gurus now, but there are these archetypes of, oh yeah, well, they're in it for the money. They've created a business out of it, and like, okay, let them do their thing. They're obviously really popular now, but I'll just go to this other one because I kind of know how that is. And people are bobbing and weaving without actually like addressing the issues within these organizations, because they're just kind of allowed to, I was about to say like the boys club, the men's club, because a lot of a lot of it is men. I will say it, a lot of it is men running these
Thank you.
organizations. Yes, absolutely. And because
Thank you for
let me
saying
tell you,
that.
what was that?
Thank you for saying that.
Oh,
We'll get into
yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they are charming, they do present maybe themselves well, like in the very beginning, and people can't wrap their head around why people are staying in these organizations. Why are they still there? Why are all of these, these women and impressionable people still flocking to them? Why? Well, it's because they're also showmen. And it's like, it's sales. It's like, I have bought a vacuum that I didn't need before. And I literally should have just told them to leave my apartment, but they started complimenting me. They started, saying, oh, like, yeah, like they know what to say to you. And probably I want to say this, and I want to be very delicate as I say this and very sensitive as I say this, but when you are in a vulnerable state, when you are possibly seeking healing because you just need relief so desperately, what they say to you, they're going to be able to hit those buttons in such a way that lands perfectly. And it almost feels like, oh my gosh, you're talking to me. No one's ever said that to me. No one's ever made me feel like I could overcome this or whatnot. And I mean, I'm not even talking about the modality piece, just the salesy part, which we know occurs. And no, but
Oh, yeah.
absolutely, that came up as you were talking.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't deal with the sales at all. Like I just, worked on mentoring the students, but there was a lot of things that I heard in the background. It's like, oh, just tell them this or just like do that. Or, it's like, yeah, it is a lot of, and the thing is that, like I said, it also attracts a lot of healers, a lot of people who lead from the heart. And those people start to see through the BS. through the bullshit. They feel it. We know. We're like, mm-mm. And then they're called out on it. And it's like the narcissistic like tendencies start to come out. And the thing is like, okay, the modalities, and for a lot of these programs, certifications, like trainings, they're amazing. They work, people have the euphoric experiences. They release so much. But the thing is that sometimes they start off, these master teachers with really good intentions, and then their mission gets derailed because of the followers, because of just the money, the growth, and the women who throw themselves at these people, especially, men, it's like, that's why I see, as an observer and as a behavioral therapist for 20 years and a subconscious behaviorist as a hypnotherapist, I look at patterns all day long. All day long. You too. Like, we've talked about this. It's like, we see these women who idolize these men. That's why, and I've had many conversations with a lot of my female friends about, it's very, I don't want to say, I don't know how to say it, but it's like for instance, like monks and priests, they take a vow of celibacy because of so much temptation. But then you have these gurus, who, like I said, they start off with good intentions, but then they're like, oh my gosh, like all these women. And then, these platforms, or what you see on social media, is not protecting the consumer, because they're then shoving a camera in their face during their most vulnerable moment. And you see how the progression of time, it becomes or how I saw it become very overly sexualized. And I was like, me personally, as a mentor, as a therapist, I don't want to be affiliated with that. That's my name on their website. Absolutely not. I don't stand for that. I'm here as a woman to protect other women. Do better. Do better. You have an obligation as somebody who is leading people through these healings to protect people. And it's like, yes, we have them sign a contract, but it's like, people are not always in a sound state. When you're in a state of survival and you see these things, you're not thinking with logic, reasoning, you don't have awareness. So you're just signing this, contract, being like, I agree to be filmed. And then it's like, okay, now you're filmed. Now you're being seen by millions of people around the world in a very vulnerable state. And, it's like, a lot of these women have no bra on. Like, it's like you see these like very somatic releases. And, I contemplated talking about this for a very long time. And like I said, there are other similar modalities that I've seen to, the organizations that I worked with, that are very highly ethical. They're done in a very structured, educational type way. Don't show their faces, don't, show it was just too extreme. It's too much.
It's exploitation. It sounds like
Thank you.
exploitation. Yeah.
Yes. They're doing it for views. They're doing it. And there's so much more that I have found out through the grapevine. I forgot. There's a platform that you can create reels on and do like a test thing to see like how it runs, to see how many people view it or like it, or before you put it on the actual Instagram. So I know many people use that, and the more sexualized or the more extravagant with all these huge movements that kind of look orgasmic, it's these companies have their tactics. So you don't even know how your the media or what was filmed of you is being used.
Right. Wow. It is extremely frustrating and exhausting when you are almost trying to create change within an organization, for the better, and use your talents that you were called upon to use, and then you find yourself kind of in the belly of the beast where this thing gets bigger, it kind of becomes a lot more unhinged. You're almost faced with, and I'm not saying this is how you feel. I want to know how you feel about this, but like this conflict of, am I doing more harm by being here? Like, am I making a change? Should I walk away now? But if I walk away, am I leaving behind other of my mentees who kind of counted on me? And based on all you described, absolutely well within your rights to walk away and with no contract. And the pay was also wonky. There's a myriad of things. But I'd love to, I guess, ask you, what was that tipping point for you? Was it an easy decision for you to eventually walk away? And when did that happen? It seemed to be a myriad of things kind of adding up.
Oh my gosh. It was the tipping point for me was when we would start to talk about, the issues or give our input as to what was going on. It was never heard. It was always like he would, beat around the bush, or he wouldn't hear us. We kept asking for a contract, or and it just was not happening, nor did he ever want to sign a contract. So that was it. And then
So you felt ignored, and he would blatantly ignore you?
I did feel ignored a lot of the time. It was just so messy. It was like there was no structured time for him to, be like, okay, maybe even once a month, I meet with all of you. We come up with a time. There were times where we would, but it was just like there was the lack of communication, and it was just like a mess. And I was like, how? There was no organization. Like, when you have an organization, you expect there to be structure. You expect there to be like a team with assigned things, which there kind of was, but it was so messy. The drama behind the scenes between the women, the marketing people, it was, yeah, I never got into all that. I always saw it as an observer, and I was just like, okay, well, I'm here to help the students. But I started to see all of it, and I'm like, mm-mm, mm-mm. And to me, like, it's a very big deal to see the people who are around you.
Mm.
And then I started to do my own research, and I started to hear things from people, and it didn't sit with my soul. So is the modality amazing? Yes. But, like in many other modalities, like Bikram yoga, I believe, don't quote me on this, but pretty much a lot of these gurus, they make up it's made up. It's literally made up. If you look up the history, I think of, some yoga teacher, he made it up. So they're making up all these programs, all these modalities. Like, yes, there's like, you feel something, you feel that energy flow and stuff. It's Kundalini energy or whatever. And people have these like somatic releases, but then you open them up. And then if you're not there to guide them through their healing, or there's no, what's it called? When, integration, then you could do more harm than good.
Absolutely. Wow. Can I ask you if you could describe the day or the week or the timeline around your departure?
Man.
Or is it still ongoing?
I left. I asked to be taken off the website. I've deleted a lot of my contributions, all my comments, all my videos. Like, yeah, there's no contract. I'm not getting residuals for that. I asked, you never gave me a clear answer. So bye. That's mine. That's my time. That's my contributions. You didn't even know how to respond yourself to some of the questions. So nor did he want to. If you're not going to nurture what you created, then what's the point? You're just doing it as a money grab.
Wow.
But the week that I left, it was just a choice that I made for myself. I was like, I don't resonate anymore. This is not what I want to do. I made a comment, saying, as mentors, and and we have mentees, how are you supposed to mentor when the master teacher doesn't show up? So, and they didn't, obviously when you say things to people and they're not ready to hear it, immediately a wall goes up, and it's a very like narcissistic answer that you get. And it's like, that's not the energy we need here. And that's not a team player. I'm like, who's not being the team player? Yeah.
They have their ways of passive aggressively name calling you or labeling you, ways to kind of form that divisiveness. But it sounds like you were really strong in your convictions and in your discernment. And when something didn't feel right for you and you weren't making change, or you felt like, the communication was completely off, you couldn't mentor someone when the head of the organization wasn't stepping in to actually lead, and you were gone. And you kind of cut that cord. And that's a huge topic that I want to bring up, is that discernment and trusting your gut. A lot of people who find themselves, especially with past trauma and who are vulnerable and seeking healing, oftentimes will report, or it will come up, that they hope to one day trust themselves again, right? Or that they feel like their picker is broken, or that they've gone through so much past trauma that being able to walk away from something or make the right choice and trust their gut is a huge growth edge for them. And we do know that when it comes to discernment, like picking and choosing from a good modality versus a fake modality, like how do people recognize that? I'm sure I have experienced fake modalities that felt amazing, and I got an experience that I felt was either life-changing for me, or I was told was life-changing when I was there. And then I look back and I'm like, okay, where's the literature on this?
Yeah.
And come to find out there wasn't none. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have done that in my living room.
Yeah. No, I know. And I've also contemplated these things because I've also tried so many things, right? It's like when you're going through your own healing process, you try so many things. And the thing is that I always say, you know what? If it helps you heal, so be it. Okay, there's that. But you also have to be ethical and trauma informed and know who you are getting the healing from. And if they are ethical and trauma informed, and how long they've been doing this, and if they've done the work. So reviews are very important. Not only that, but it's like you have to know their qualifications. And it's this balance of like, okay, for me, I want to educate. I want to say, be careful, especially women, vulnerable women who go to these men who, a lot of them get sucked in. They get sucked into these like sexual encounters with them. They feel high, they feel alive. It's, they feel vulnerable. They get promised all this stuff and then they're taken advantage of. There's a community of women who are speaking out about this now. It's huge. And the thing is that so many women are scared to speak up. I am not scared. Fuck that shit. I'm sorry. Excuse my language. But if you continue to be scared to use your voice to speak up about these people who take advantage of you, who know how to play with words, or they MK Ultra you, or they're very manipulative, then yeah, if you're highly suggestible, which I see a lot of these people are, because you're in a state of like vulnerability when you're going through trauma. So it's very easy to give your money away to like these organizations, and people are going to be like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And you feel like an experience. Yes. But, what do you do with it? And the thing is that a lot of these people come, to learn something to start a side hustle. But then there's no education or training on business, on ethics, on how to deal with any of that. What to do. You need to be, you need to have like insurance, because if somebody comes back and sues you, like, oh, you better be careful.
Yes,
yeah. So
absolutely.
I deleted all my videos, on my platform. I'm like, I would always get a consent as well, but I I don't want to put people's vulnerable moments online. It just doesn't seem right. Maybe I'll put like the movement of like what happens in the body, but I don't want to show their face, even if they give consent. It just doesn't sit right with me anymore. I'm not there. I don't want to do that. So yeah, I stepped back and now I was like, yeah, not okay. Do better.
Yeah, and fuck that shit. Fuck them. Seriously. Because that is the way of controlling, is to suppress your voice, is to silence you. And once you're like in a vulnerable, disempowered place where you stop speaking up because you feel like your place might be compromised, or that they'll pick somebody else, or you don't want to rock the boat. There's so much programming. And especially, and with women too, that like, oh, we have to, don't be drama, right? Oh, if I speak up, then I'm going to be called difficult, right? And we don't want to be difficult. And it's time. I'm so glad that you're raising your voice, because you're empowering so many others, with this movement to say, no, like, enough is enough. This ends now. And at the same time, we still deserve safe places for healing. I don't think this is a conversation of let's dismantle the healing structure or spiritual space structure, but it needs an overhaul.
Yes. Yes. And we know from going to healing circles, it's like we open the circle, it's a safe space. What's shared in the circle stays in the circle. But then these things are like being publicized, and you're seeing people screaming and like sobbing and like their body, releasing nervous energy, and they're just like shaking and just like having these like orgasmic experiences, which is great. But then there's like no follow through, and it's like, oh my gosh, I feel elated, or it opened up a can of worms and I just can't sleep anymore. It's just, he did not want to share his secrets because I don't think he knew how to explain it. He was just so secretive. I'm the one that wrote the training manual, because the training manual we got when I, took the first course was horrible. Such broken English. I took extensive notes, and then just out of the kindness of my heart, I combined both and I put them together, and I was like, presented it, and we had to fight him so much because he didn't want it out there. He didn't want to, give his secrets away, but yet these people are paying all this money. And then he's just like, you just have to remember. And I was like, we're literally like running through the stuff during this seminar, and you expect us to retain all that information. So I know I have such a photographic memory when it comes to like seminars, note taking, what people say. Like, I'm like super deep. I've always been this way in school. So I could literally take notes, remember things, combine it, explain it, present it. I'm so good about learning things and regurgitating it back to you. Like, I'd explain things all day long as a therapist, as a hypnotherapist, do the cognitive portion, and then I do the hypnotic portion. So I talk all day long. So it's these things that I just see things that are, missing, like missing pieces. And I was like, okay, this is not there. This is not there. Like, students need this. They need support here. Like, they're not getting it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And people deserve that. They deserve a higher level of care. And just because it's a spiritual space, or it's energy healing, maybe combined with something else, hopefully combined with something backed by a structure, doesn't mean that that you have to get less of a quality of experience. It's almost like we've also been conditioned to think that we don't deserve a higher level of care because it's in the healing space, or it's in the spiritual space, or it's not therapist. And I'll say, like, and I raise my hand that, going through grad school is not for the faint of heart, and you're getting your master's degree, in counseling. And ethics is something that's like, I feel like I've
almost spent 2 semesters on it. And they beat in every single ethical law in you to the point where it's like the threat of death, where you almost leave these semesters feeling so
Thank you.
paranoid.
Yes.
Like, like everything can harm somebody. And then you get out there, they're realizing like, okay, you know what? I kind of needed that because my client will be safe because of all the overcorrection I've done in my studies to almost like over prevent and over course correct to the point that, the only good therapy is the kind you live through. And so, and we know that like people are doing this for a side hustle. It's being advertised and rolled out that way now, which is kind of scary that it's like, hey, take this, seminar in one afternoon and make, 20 grand a month. Yeah. And buy my course, which will never interact with me. By the way, nothing wrong with people who are selling digital products and digital packages either, but the way that you roll it out, I think matters and says a lot about the checks and balances. And also, there are programs out there that come with a video package, but you also get access to the mentor. Like that's also part of what you're paying for. You're getting access to the team. But I don't think on face value, people are, taught to really look at these things through like a microscope before they click add to cart, because they really simply just want relief. And they think that or they want to call themselves a healer in one afternoon. And I mean, but by the, through my experience, think if you've been healing all of your life, a certification does not necessarily a healer make, but maybe what you want are the tools to be able, and the structure and the training to take what you've done all of your life and funnel it through a mechanism that can heal people with repeatability, with a lot more certainty. And you're here, you're hitting that goal and keeping people safe a lot more often than not, more of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it reminds me of like, even after I graduated and I worked for companies, it's like every year we would have to go through the ethics course and online thing again. I'm like, oh my God, I could literally regurgitate this. Like, so it's like, and then you would leave a company and then you would get hired at another company. And it was a requirement that you take the ethics. That was like, oh my God, if I have to sit through another ethics course or video, my brain's going to blow. But like you said, it's so important.
Yeah.
Do no harm.
Do no harm. And another thing, we also had a publication. I think it was, what was it? Psychology Today. There's a magazine, and they would every month have an entire couple pages of people who lost their licenses. Remember this? And they would list out the names of all of the psychotherapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, literally pages of that month who lost their licenses for malpractice and what they did. And so there was a constant kind of a accountability reminder of like, no, this is a responsibility. It's like a duty to serve. And also, you've worked so hard for this license, don't want to like blow it for something. And some of this stuff it seems really, really small. And there also is stuff that's a lot more severe and more harmful, but it's like, yeah, like don't talk about your clients in public with your friend at a coffee shop and give them every
sleep with your students. Don't sleep with your staff. Like, stop. Like, what the hell? Yeah.
But it highlights the intimacy of that healing space, whether it's a therapy office, whether it's working out of a salon, doing a Reiki healing session. There's trust there. They're trusting themselves to be, and by the way, I also want to say, maybe you can help me articulate this, but it is not your fault if you were like, if you felt violated, okay, if you were felt violated and it gets maybe disguised in the fact that, no, I fell for my practitioner. We had a bond, and, one thing led to another. No. There is a power differential. Okay. There's a man in power who took advantage of the situation. You were not the one who, and then don't question yourself for, like, oh, well, he was really, really charming. And that's not on you. This was a space that was, twisted and turned to their favor, and they acted irresponsibly.
Thank you for saying that.
Got my quartz crystal.
That happened in this organization with people that I've been in contact with, that I know, that I've heard. And that was another factor that I was just like, fuck that. Like, absolutely not. Like, just what it did, the amount of PTSD and overload and mental crisis it created. It's just, how can you say that you're out there trying to heal the masses, teaching this supposed amazing modality, but yet you're hurting the people that are literally at your side, your right-hand people. So yeah, it was, for a long time, I didn't know about a lot of this stuff. And then as it started to come out, I was like, get me out, get me out. And the thing is, I never wanted to do this. It's like, okay, yeah, it was presented to me, all these opportunities. It's like, oh yeah, you helped write the book. It was amazing. Would you like to work with us? I gave it thought. I was like, I have my own business. I have my this. And, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's something, a change is needed, or, it's something new that maybe I want to branch out with. But I was like, yeah, the quality of what I'm giving versus what I'm getting in return, that's what he didn't like hearing as well, is not resonating with me. Yeah, because I'm here to help people. I'm here to take something that works, that's evidence-based, and maybe bringing it into my business to help my current clients as like, an adjunct to something. But that's not what happened. So, and the thing too is that, like, I told him, I was like, look, you need to state somewhere in your paperwork, in the teachings, that they need to have a therapist. This is an adjunct to a therapy that they are already going through. Just no train, like, they come from a different background. They don't come from like a therapy or, like, understanding these ethical things. It's like, maybe they were a martial artist before, and now they're like, taking these like teachings, and it's not the same. We don't know their background of their unmet needs and their timeline, and now they're presenting those wounds and to the world, and lack of, respect for women, and maybe they have mother issues themselves. Maybe they didn't grow up with a mother, like, and now they want power and they want fame and money. So everybody has a background. I get it. Nobody is perfect. Everybody has stuff, but you gotta choose your level of crazy. It's like everybody's vibrating at a certain frequency. Not to say everybody's low frequency, but where you want?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It's yeah. It's it's the understanding that healers need healing, and the healers who are healing themselves and working on their healing are the ones who go out there to help others heal themselves in an ethical and safe way. Therapy was required, even during my master's program as a graduate, as well, and making sure that we all had our own therapists, so that the counter transference wouldn't be, we wouldn't be disentangling things that we should have already disentangled ourselves from or worked through outside of the therapy process. And, I think it brings up to me like this feeling of like, you saw something good in this organization. You saw something good in the modality, and it's disappointing and leaves a bad taste. It can leave a bad taste in your mouth when it was something that's like, my gosh, this has so much potential, and maybe you felt the benefits and other people might have been benefiting, but it gets tainted, by bad players, by bad actors, by people who are taking advantage and victimizing the people within the organization and clients. And it's because I do believe, and this is my own belief, but I do believe that like nothing is ever wasted. So where you are, what you experience, nothing is wasted. And so if one of the reasons,
yes.
Exactly. Because now you're here talking about it, friend, and you are, if going through all of that is like, honestly, you are, and I mean this in a positive way, using this word trigger, you're triggering within me or igniting within me, like my own value systems when it comes to ethics and what type of practitioner I want to be, and things that I have pushed aside for so long because, okay, well, that's the way that these fairs operate, and that's the way this community is, and and it's kind of fun, to have that modality and that, but there is, I have been in groups where I've seen, like, I also want to highlight the practitioner who means well. So I have been in groups where the practitioner was doing a meditation and she was also channeling some entities, as well in the channeling, and people were crying. It was, I had the most amazing experience, and we got to talk about it afterwards. But as an empath, I could sense that when one of the participants was sharing her experience, which brought up a lot of trauma for her, I could tell that the practitioner wanted to help but didn't know what to say. Genuinely didn't know what to do, or maybe refer her out to somebody. And I was literally, it was my first, I was paying to be there as a guest. So it wasn't, I didn't feel like it was my place to overstep, or neither did I know. But I, feel like, my God, how amazing, even more amazing would this practitioner be to understand that, hey, you know what? Can after I turn off the camera, can you stay a minute afterwards or something, some consult? But she almost looked frozen, and in a way where
I'm very grateful that very young I got into behavior modification and behavior therapy, because it's like we know the ABCs of behavior, the functions of behavior, like the back of our hand. And like you say, it's like, man, you could step in, but it's like not your place to do that. And I think, like I said, it's your job to be like, maybe you should reach out to a therapist to work through that, because yes, this modality helped bring up those things, but now how are you going to integrate that? How are you going to work through that? And that's what I'm getting at. It's like, it opens you up, and then you're just like, and then the thing is, I got so many questions from the students who were just like, this happened during a session, or they didn't activate, or there was no movement. And I was like, because if they are in overwhelm, if they have resistance, if their nervous system isn't relaxed, you can't expect to see what you see online to happen in a first session. So there was no training as to okay, if it doesn't work and you follow the algorithm and, blah, 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 and nothing happens, and the client's like, I didn't feel a damn thing. And then they're like, what was I supposed to say? I freaked out. I didn't know that. My point. Exactly. And I'm only one mentor to all these mentees. I'm not getting paid, nor is there some program to make sure that these training videos are put out there, or that they have to pass a test. It's called a university. Yeah. You should have to have a test of even a true false questions. It's watch the video, like we did when every time we would get hired for a behavioral job as a therapist. It's like we had to watch the video and then answer all of the questions. Remember that? Oh my gosh. Hours. So yeah, when it comes to these huge somatic releases, it's beautiful if you know how to guide somebody.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the people that go, they do have, like I mentioned, a therapeutic background, but a lot of these people don't. It's kind of like what you see with all these people who go to Tulum, and then they're like, I'm a shaman now. It's like all of a sudden you're a shaman.
I think I actually got that Groupon, but I didn't click. I think I actually got that. And I was like, what? This is a great deal.
I could be a shaman now. Yeah. Oh my God.
So I do want to, take just and kind of go over some of the things that you said, just regarding regulating this. I mean, if the spiritual space could benefit from being regulated as life coaching now is and wasn't, before, but now there is a licensure track for for life coaching, and there's supervision required and all those hours as well. Because the space still, like we talked about, like the wild, wild west, if I'm hearing you said that one way that you can maybe help kind of streamline some ethics here is partnering the modality with outside therapeutic care, or some type of maybe working in tandem with a therapist, possibly. You also talked about reviews and how long the practitioner has been in practice as something to look out for.
Yeah. Making sure they're trauma informed or have some kind of training, with working with trauma.
Yeah, that's a huge piece.
Mhm.
Yeah. Is there anything else that someone can look for in terms of, given the state of healing modalities right now, to help them make a better informed decision and discern?
Yeah. It's like, ask if there's like a training manual, a book, like what kind of support are you going to get after? Is there a code of conduct? It's, if they're trauma informed, it's just like all these things, like, what do I need in order to start working with people? If they don't know how to answer you, then you just know it's a money grab. If they didn't even know that you need like insurance, liability insurance, or, if they're shoving a camera in your face, it's like all these things. It's like, will you honor my wishes if I then choose to change my mind about like being shown publicly, on your space, on your platform? It's just like all these little things to look out for. Yeah, there's so many communities of women, who are speaking out. So it's like, join those communities and maybe ask like, hey, does anybody have any information about this organization or this master teacher? Ask, be informed. So and the thing is, what I see a lot, it's like, as this stuff comes to the light, a lot of people are like, okay, well, I'm just gonna, do it for me, or I'm gonna go to the next seminar and just do myself. Because like you said, they're scared to speak up. They don't want to stir the pot. They're just like, they turn a blind eye to it. And I just cannot support anybody who I know is hurting other people, or, just not. It's like money, 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 money.
Yeah.
It makes me want to throw up. Like, my body has like a physical somatic reaction to that. It's just, I can't. There's only been a few times in my life where I've really gotten pissed off to the point where I have like had an outburst, or just like, and yeah, I think this is one of those things. One was with an ex-boyfriend. It's like, oh, don't lie to me. Don't say you're doing something, and then, because, as an empath, as somebody, with that, we just know it irks us to our core when things are not being done from the heart.
Yes, absolutely. Oh yeah, another example of detoxing, in a healthy way. And I thank you for your outburst today. I thank you for getting loud about this, for empowering all of us to detox from toxic patterns, narcissistic communities, and people who are calling themselves gurus, but are really suppressing
masters.
people's voices.
Yeah.
And masters. Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned something about community, and that's so important. The more we can come together, and you talked about women's groups as well who are speaking out. I mean, really survivors, really like survivor groups of organizations, cults. They all share a lot of the same boxes, a lot of the things that you mentioned today. A lot of the programming, the kind of like the established culture of what we talk about, what we don't talk about, the unspoken rules of who's in charge, and the limits of what we can and cannot say, and will I get kicked out if this, and all these things that are mechanisms to control other people. Definitely the spiritual space, the spiritual community needs an overhaul when it comes to healing. And you brought up some amazing points today about regulation. I'm so glad that we talked about this. I feel like conversations like this are the first step in the right direction.
Yes.
It's just how it
And
starts.
a lot of other people in the healing communities, they are now coming out and speaking up about it. And they're also advocating for women who have gone through this exact thing. And there's a couple people that I would love to bring on and to have join us. We're going to have to talk about that because
that would be amazing.
yes,
I would
yes.
definitely welcome that. This is a movement, and we're sparking. It takes a spark. I do want to bring it back to you again. We are talking about ethics, and we're talking about a higher level of care. And if someone were to work with you and want to work with you and experience what a coaching session might be like with you, a Reiki session might be like with you, I have experienced a past life regression session with you.
Got it. Yeah. So we got to talk about that. We never
Oh, yes.
followed up on that podcast.
And
Yeah.
I felt safe. And that was a very intense session, but it was a great example of a deep, intense healing where I was completely emotional, but also feeling joy at the same time, all kinds of things in a safe environment. And you held that space safely for me. How can people contact you and work with you? And is your calendar too busy?
It's pretty busy, but
I know.
you can find time. You can go on my website, Mind Body Practitioners with an S at the end.com, or you can just Google my name. It's so unique. I'll come up. Yeah. Or you just follow me on all the platforms under Mind Body Practitioners.
Well, thank you for your service. Thank you for being a light in this world and for bringing this conversation to light. You are the catalyst for this podcast episode. You're the catalyst for really the movement that I am honored to just be a part of today, that I know will grow. And thank you for that. Thank you for shedding light on this. As always, everyone listening, yes, if you have ever been in a situation where you feel unsafe, or you felt like you were in a space that you were entering in for healing and maybe something just felt completely off to you, please reach out to your community, talk to somebody. And you can also, can I invite them to maybe contact you on your website in some way, maybe send you a message as well?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I'm getting in contact, and I'm in communication with some other organizations and groups that that have a support group for women for this exact thing.
Awesome. You are not alone. You are not alone. Support is here. As always, everyone, stay discerning and stay uncaged, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Grawben, for being here.
Thank you, Charles, for having me.